Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the HP Envy TouchSmart 4, which is a kind of large name for a kind of large laptop. It's relatively small in that it's an ultrabook. It's less than an inch thick, but it weighs a little over 4.5 pounds, and it's a little bit larger than the sort of notebook that I normally cover here at Liliputing. And why am I looking at it? Well, because it's HP's first ultrabook that has a touchscreen display. We'll take a closer look at that in a moment, but first I just wanted to compare to something like, say, the Samsung Series 9 Ultrabook. It's a 13-inch screen. The Samsung model is half an inch thick as opposed to 0.9 inches thick, weighs about 2.5 pounds compared to 4.5 pounds. It's a little bit funny to me. I think that these are both in the same category of devices called Ultrabooks, but that's largely because Intel sets the names and or sets the guidelines and decided thinness matters. Screen size doesn't really matter as much, and weight doesn't matter as much. But there are a couple of other things that do make it an Ultrabook. It has a hard drive, but it also has a solid-state disk for caching, which basically helps improve performance, and it does have reasonably long battery life at over 5 hours. So let's take a quick look around the laptop. You'll notice we've got a full-size Ethernet port here, although you do need to sort of open it up if you want to use it. HDMI, 2 USB ports, SD card slot, nothing around the front. On the other side we've got another USB port for a total of 3, mic and headphone jacks, lock port, power button, and that's about it. On the bottom, like most Ultrabooks, there's no access panel, so if you want to upgrade the RAM or the hard drive, you're going to need to do some minor surgery and possibly void your warranty. It is available to be configured with up to 8 GB of RAM. This particular model has a Core i5 processor, Ivy Bridge CPU, 500 GB hard drive, 32 gigs. Was it 32 or 24? Either way, it has a smaller solid-state cache drive, and you can find more details at liliputing.com in our detailed review. And this model also has 4 GB of RAM. You'll also notice that there's some ventilation up here. It does generate a little bit of heat. It's not too bad, but it definitely generates some heat, and so you need that. And the fan will also make a little bit of noise. The top has a brushed aluminum metal sort of black surface here. The bottom, not sure if this is plastic, but it's got a sort of soft touch finish. So it doesn't feel like hard plastic or shiny glossy plastic. It's got a matte finish, which is nice. The brushed aluminum also goes to the inside, where we'll take a look at the keyboard area, sort of a silvery gray and a black keyboard. The keyboard itself is pretty good. It's nice and large. It's got an island style or a chiclet style layout. I find typing on it very comfortable. You might notice that if you push down in the center area, it does flex a little bit. You can't see it too well on camera, but I don't find typing to be difficult at all. There's a dedicated row on the side here for home, page up, page down, end, and so forth. Arrow keys are reasonably large. Overall, I don't have a lot of complaints about the use of the keyboard. These lights are a little bit funny, though. I find it strange that you need a constant reminder that the Wi-Fi is on. Having a light that says that mute is on is maybe a little bit useful. And the funniest one, I think, is it's a backlit keyboard. And if you turn on the backlight, then the illumination on the F5 key goes off. Turn it off, and the F5 key is illuminated. So basically, something is always going to be glowing on the keyboard, which might take a little bit of getting used to. The touchpad is nice and large. It's a clickpad style touchpad, which means that you can click down on the whole thing. But there's a lot you can do with just sort of tapping in terms of multi-touch gestures, and we'll get to that in a moment. The bar up here is for a speaker. It's got Beats audio on this laptop, and there's even a small subwoofer. So audio is better than on a lot of laptops. It's not spectacular. You're still going to want to plug in speakers if you really want to power your party, I guess. But if you're not running a dance party, you're just watching some movies or listening to some music, you could do worse than the speakers on this laptop. But again, it's the touchscreen that really sort of makes this different than most of the laptops that have been released to date. And so it comes with Windows 8 software. You've got 10-point capacitive multi-touch, and what that means is that you can navigate through here on the home screen. You can launch full-screen applications pretty easily and interact with them. But it also means that if you go to the desktop mode, there are certain things that I find a little bit easier to do with a touchscreen. So while you can use the mouse cursor and sort of hover over different things, you can also, say you want to just real quickly check and see which power mode you're on, you just tap the power button. You want to drag and drop a window? Easy to do. Create a new window. And some of these actions, it turns out, I was a little surprised to notice that they're easier to do when you're touching instead of having to drag the mouse cursor around and so forth. So, you know, at first I was skeptical of the idea of having touch on a traditional notebook that doesn't work in a tablet mode, but from time to time I really do find it faster to reach up and touch the screen. Now there's certain things that, you know, long press to emulate a right click and then say go to personalize, you know, that might not be something you'd want to do with the touchscreen unless you were on a tablet. It might be easier to do it using a touchpad or a mouse, but for other activities like dragging and dropping icons, it's actually pretty easy to reach up. Now you may notice as I'm doing this, the screen wobbles a little bit while you do that, and it's a little bit problematic. I mean, you get used to it pretty quickly, and it's not like the whole thing starts shaking too much, and that's one of the benefits of having a relatively heavy laptop here, is it holds the base in place, but sturdier hinges would also be nice. So that when you tap, the screen doesn't wobble as much as it does. If you don't ever want to use the touchscreen, you don't have to. You can use the touchpad for certain gestures. So just like swiping from the side brings up the Charms menu, swiping from the side of the touchpad does the same thing. Swiping from the other side lets you switch between applications. And there's support for pinch to zoom and other gestures. So the touchpad is pretty decent, pretty responsive. If for some reason you don't want to use it, you can disable it by double tapping. Well, you're supposed to be able to disable it by double tapping here until this little light indicates, but it doesn't seem to want to do that right now. I did have luck. Oh, you know what? I think it only works when you have a USB mouse plugged in, which we don't have right now. So you can disable that when you have a USB mouse plugged in so that you can just use the mouse instead. When I first started using the laptop, I did notice that my palm swiped up against the touchpad a little bit more often than I would like, and so the cursor would move when I was typing. When I was writing the written review for this laptop, that wound up becoming a big problem. But all you really need to do is go into your mouse settings, and go to ClickPad settings, and under pointing, there's a sensitivity option which you can adjust. So it was set to light touch, you change it to something of a more heavy touch, and then it doesn't accidentally detect your palm as much as it would have otherwise. So overall, pretty decent experience, and I do find having the touchscreen on a traditional laptop a little bit more useful than I would have expected, not just for running full-screen Windows-style applications, Windows 8-style applications, but also for running desktop-style applications. Now the screen quality, on the other hand, is, you can see it's a glossy screen. That means that we get a lot of reflection here, and even as we've been looking at it, you can see my reflection. That's going to bug some people more than others, but I don't find it too bad because I'm sort of used to it. I've seen a lot of laptops with glossy displays. One thing that's a little bit troubling, though, is that the colors wash out pretty quickly when you go when you tilt it forward or tilt it back. Side-to-side viewing angles are pretty good. So if somebody's sitting next to you watching a movie over your shoulder, it's not going to be a problem, unless they're a lot taller or shorter than you, in which case it's going to look more like this. Performance, I've been pretty happy with. Like I said, I get about 5 hours of battery life from this. It has a Core i5 processor. It basically performs like I would expect from a machine with a hard drive, solid-state cache, and a Core i5 processor. Pretty similar to a lot of other Ivy Bridge notebooks that I've tested recently. You can find more details at Liliputing.com about performance. I think the biggest question is the touchscreen useful? Yes, I would say it is. Is it worth a $100 premium? Because this model sells for about $750, whereas a model without the touchscreen sells for around $650 or so. Well, that's going to be for you to decide, I guess. It also increases the weight, makes this more than 4.5 pounds as opposed to closer to 4 pounds. It's useful, but is it $100 useful? That's going to be something that I guess everybody has to decide for themselves. One thing that I have noticed, though, is that on non-touchscreen laptops, after using this for a couple of days, I find myself constantly wanting to touch the screen. So it is a more natural user interface than you might otherwise think. Anyways, there's a quick overview of the HP Envy TouchSmart 4. You can find more details at Liliputing.com. This is Brad Linder.